I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The anticipation, the things that we do leading up to a big event are actually where all of the fun, the joy, and the happiness is. The actual thing, the actual event, the actual vacation or birthday or whatever it is, it's kind of a flash in the pan, and once it arrives, we just are watching it slip away. It's of everything leading up to it that's like where the fun and excitement is. I am going to harness that. I am going to focus big on the kind of 6-7 months leading up to my 40th birthday, and I want to share with you the 11 things that I am focusing on to enter my 40th year happy, healthy, joyful, grateful, all the things. I mean, mentally stable is questionable, but the other stuff for sure. Today's video is sponsored by Rocket Money. We'll talk about them a little bit later. The first thing I want to tell you that I'm doing, which is going to maybe come as a shock to some people, remember, it's not an indictment on you, but I'm cutting out alcohol. I've been inspired by a friend of mine who has just completely cut out alcohol. And it's kind of weird because I don't actually really even drink alcohol that often. I don't know, like once or twice a month maybe. It's one of the things that I would like to cut out completely. The second thing is sugar. Now, hold up. I am not cutting sugar out completely because, well, I would be kidding myself if I thought that I could go to a completely sugarless life. It's not going to happen, nor do I necessarily even want that to happen. I just want to consume far less of it. There are endless benefits to cutting out sugar or cutting down your sugar intake, and that is one of my big goals leading up to my 40th birthday, is to seriously reduce the amount of sugar I am consuming. The next thing is that it sounds like I'm already like putting myself into my granny shoes, but I really want to focus on my mobility. Now all I can think about is that mobility scooter commercial with the rascal. I have actually had to use one of those when I was pregnant. Anyways, I want to focus on my mobility. Totally resonate with all the funny memes about like, I bent over and like my back hurts, and then when you're 30 you sleep funny and your back hurts, like it feels like you fell off a roof. I totally resonate with all of that, and I don't want to. I don't like it. I am not of the belief that 40 is old. I don't want to lean into the like, oh, I'm 40 so I just feel old and just creaky and my back hurts and stuff. I don't want to go through life like that because, well, I feel like I'm in the back half, the second half of life, and I'm thinking about as my kids get older and they have families and they have kids and I become a grandma. I'm nowhere close to that just yet, but I know that the choices I'm making now are going to inform what that experience is like for me. And I want to be an energetic and a healthy and a vibrant and crazy and weird grandmother. That's my goal. And the second piece of that is strength. I really want to focus on building up strength. After having 4 children, including a set of twins, I feel as though I lack core strength at all. I got none. You know how you can like pull a muscle when you strain it? I've actually like pulled a ab muscle trying to like sit up from a laying down position. It's shameful, okay? Just want to feel strong and healthy and vibrant and alive and all those things, especially as I move into my 40s and hopefully, God willing, far beyond that. Number 4 is counting the hidden cost, or asking myself, at what cost? There's a lot of things in the world that we can measure. There are metrics for so many things that we do, so many goals that we set, that they're measurable, right? There's different ways that we can look at the success or the failure or what this thing is costing us on paper, but there are lots of things that there isn't a metric for, there isn't a measurement for. And so I am trying to look at the hidden costs of choices, decisions that I'm making. Sure, I can do this, but when I actually look at that thing in like a 360 global perspective, what is it costing me? Because you can't quantify like, I'm choosing to do this thing, but it's costing me my peace. Or I'm choosing to do this thing, but it's costing me my integrity. Figuring out exactly the apples to apples correlation between if I do this thing, then I have more time, well, how much time? So it's just a matter of looking at the hidden costs of things and being really realistic that just because something sounds good on paper or seems like a worthy goal to have, I'm actually evaluating the true cost of it, looking at the hidden costs as much as possible and trying to, in some ways, quantify them so that I can be much more realistic with myself about how I'm using my time and how I'm using my money. And that brings me to today's video sponsor, Rocket Money. It's a personal finance app. It's going to help you save money. It's going to help you manage your money better, lower bills, cut subscription costs, and have a very clear picture of your finances. They actually have some very practical resources and tools that are going to help you actually manage your money better. Things like helping you to cancel unwanted subscriptions. They're going to identify those recurring subscription charges for you, and then they will cancel them for you, okay? It's one of the most annoying things when we sign up for something that's free, we get a free trial or whatever, and then we forget to cancel it. Not with Rocket Money. They are going to help you cancel that. They're going to point it out to you that like, hey, you're getting charged for this thing over and over again. Do you still want to be getting charged for this thing? And you're like, no, I don't. And they're like, we got it. High five. And of course, we can't make good sound financial decisions without data, without information. And Rocket Money is going to help you actually analyze your budget, look at where you're spending your money, break that down into categories so that you can create a completely custom budget for your lifestyle. It's not cookie cutter, it's totally custom for you and your financial situation. I've been sharing with you guys about Rocket Money for, I don't know, over a year at this point. If you want to take control of your finances, which I highly recommend, you can go to rocketmoney.com/Angela, do the free trial, and you can unlock more features with premium. And the features really are things that are very helpful for me, helpful for most of us who are not financial wizards, who are just trying to be better stewards of what we have. Number 5 for me is no more overwork. I read a quote recently that said, overwork is a form of unbelief. And it kind of hit me right in the gut. It's very easy, just like lifestyle creep comes in. There's all kinds of these things that get to our brains in ways that we don't even realize, that we kind of go on autopilot with things. We stop being grateful for things. We forget what to be grateful for because the bar has moved, the goalpost has moved. And I just feel as though somewhere in the last couple of years, I really just think since 2020, this has been a lot of people's experience. So much around us just feels like chaos. In a desire to feel as though you are preparing, you're doing what you can, you're working hard, you can always swing that pendulum too hard to where you allow yourself, I'm really preaching to myself here, but like I allow myself to get into a place where I'm doing too much without paying attention to the cost, without recognizing the cost, or recognizing the cost but feeling as though I don't have a choice. When you work for yourself, when you have a business, an entrepreneur really of any kind, there's almost no end to your work because you can always be working. You can always be doing more. There are so many little things and you can always be doing more. And so one of the things that I tried to focus on this year was making some changes in my business in that regard. As I approach my 40th birthday, I definitely do not want to enter my 40s feeling like I'm just hustling and overworking and grinding and like all of that stuff. I'm here for the hard work element. That is a time and a season, but at some point, you can't sustain that. So you have to figure out where is best to use your time. Where's the 20% of effort that's leading to 80% of the results, right? So I don't want to get too in the weeds of like businessy talk here, but that is one of the big things on my list as I approach my 40th birthday is not overworking and reminding myself that overwork is a form of unbelief. Number 6 is the DIY University. I am a homeschool mom, so I do love edumacation. I do love learning myself real good. I didn't go to college. I don't have a college degree, and I've thought about it many times going back to school. You know, you can read so many great like human interest stories about grandmas who go back to college or just moms who go back to college. While that is appealing and I'm not taking it off the table for myself at some point, I'm not at a point in my life where actually committing to a full college schedule or even a part-time is something that I can do. But here's the beautiful thing. While the internet has brought all kinds of craziness and weirdness to our lives, it's also brought some really, really good things. One of those things being that basically anything you want to know about anything is available online. Now, of course, there's lots of things for which hands-on experience, mentorship, apprenticeship is much more practical and useful in learning the thing. But when it comes to more generic topics, you can find almost all that information online. Love, and I talk about this as related to like the homeschooling things, like Khan Academy and Udemy and Masterclass, Wondrium. They changed their name. They changed it to Wondrium or from, I don't remember. But like all of those websites are fantastic if you have like very topical things. But one of the other things I recently discovered is that MIT actually has like an openware software thing where, don't ask me to do the technical stuff. I don't know. Maybe I should take a class on that. It's basically like open software from MIT where you can almost like audit classes. These are classes they have uploaded on there from like the 90s even. If you're like me and you were never smart enough to go to MIT, you can take classes from MIT basically. I mean, you have like video or audio of the lectures, you get lecture notes, you get the recommended reading, most of the things that would come with the class. I mean, there's even ways that you can take some of the quizzes and exams and stuff. It just depends on the class. Every class is a little bit different, but that's kind of one of the things that I am doing is doing myself a little bit of a DIY university. Now, I'm not going to be issuing myself a degree. Exciting and fun and interesting for me to know that if there's this topic that I'm really fascinated by and I want to know more, it's very tempting to feel like, well, unless I go to college, I just am never going to really be able to get into the weeds. And that's just not true. I mean, they have undergraduate and graduate level classes. I've already started taking one of the classes. We're not even in the new year yet. So that's one of the things that I'm focusing on leading up to my 40th birthday is my DIY college, DIY university. Oh, number 7 is such a good one. I am lowering my expectations. Oh, I truly believe at this point in my life that unmet expectations are essentially the root of almost all unhappiness, and oftentimes those are expectations we are imposing on other people. One of the things that I am working on is lowering my expectations, not just of those around me, but of myself. And it's not because I want to be lazy or whatever. It's because the way that our brains work. We've already talked about this, right? The joy, the excitement, the dopamine, all of the good things in something are like in the anticipation and the getting there and the journey to there. When we get there, when we achieve the thing, now in order to have that feeling again, we have to set the next bar. You're just setting yourself up for not being able to ever really enjoy your successes, enjoy your accomplishments, or allow other people to meet your expectations or even exceed them in some way. So there's a whole lot to it, and I feel like truly each one of these things could be its own video to dive deeper into, but one of the things I'm doing is lowering my expectations and scaling back some of my goals. Not because I don't ever want to eventually get there, but from here to over there is really, really far. From here to here is realistic, it's doable, and it's one that when I get there, I still have another goal I can set after that, and I don't have to fall into that trap of sort of getting to the top and then you're like, what do I do here, right? Like, I think I'm in no danger of getting to the top, but you know what I mean. That kind of goes hand in hand with number 8, which is living in the gain and not the gap. We've talked about this before, and I've shared this book with you guys before. It's by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy, The High Achiever's Guide to Happiness, Confidence, and Success. If you are somebody who is goal-oriented, who sets goals and likes to achieve things, has kind of high expectations, one of the most important books I read this year because it really helped me to see where, oh my gosh, I am never taking the time to look backwards and be proud of myself for how I got here or what I did or what I achieved. Once I do that thing, the joy and the feeling of fulfillment is like very short-lived, and then we immediately jump into, okay, well, what's next? What's the next goal? And so we're constantly living in the gap of from where we are to where we want to be, rather than living in the gain of like, look at this mountain I climbed. Now we're trying to get into the clouds. Now we're trying to get into space. Like, we're always living in the gap and never really like allowing ourselves to just exist in the gain of like, look at how far I've come. And of course, we need some of that like gap mentality to drive us forward, to keep us achieving things if that's your goal for life. But I definitely think that there's an unhealthy balance that can come, especially for certain personality types, where enough is never enough. And it's not even about specifically what the thing or the goal is. It's just that once you achieve it, you immediately go on to the next. And it really breeds a lot of unhappiness. It does not foster a lot of gratitude because we're just thinking about the next thing, and sometimes in a lot of good ways, right? Like, okay, I achieved this goal, now I want this goal. And when your goal is something good, maybe even like altruistic, right? Then it's like, of course, people are going to cheer you on, like, yes, you did that thing, now the next thing, right? But it doesn't matter how good, bad, or otherwise your goals are if you don't stop to look back and see how far you've come and allow yourself to feel some sense of accomplishment, pride, and kind of live in that space. It's just nearly impossible to live and be in like a posture of gratitude and happiness, because you're just always feeling as though you're lacking because you're not there yet. Even though you just got here, now I need to be there, right? It's unrealistic, it's very hard to sustain, and I think it's a lot of the reason for much of our discontent and unhappiness in life. Which leads me to number 9. By my 40th birthday, I'm focusing on what I'm calling a better story. Our lives are stories. If we think about those goals and the things that we're setting, like, it's really about like, what story do I want to tell when I get there? What's the journey from here to there? What's the story? How did I get there? What happened in my life? And y'all know one of my favorite sort of sayings is that we have to choose our regrets. You do not escape this life without regrets. Everyone is going to have them. It's just a product of the fact that there is never a perfect solution. A quote from Thomas Sowell, there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs. And this is very similar in that our lives we're trading something. We're trading time for money, whatever it is that we're trading. And we have to choose which of those things, those trade-offs, we can live with, right? What are the things that if I regret that, I can live with it. If I have to go through life regretting that, I can't live with that regret. I'm not going to be able to sleep at night with that regret. I am just very, very conscious at this point in my life about the fact that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make wrong decisions. I'm going to have regrets. Which ones can I live with and which ones can I not? And so that to me is all encompassed in the story of your life and the story of my life, and a better story for my life. And what does that look like? A better story for how I show up in the world, in the real world. And while I know that I am not ultimately the one that is in control of my life and my life story, there are elements of choice and regret that are choices that I am making and things I have to live with. And I want to make sure that that those are the best that they can be, and that the story that my husband and I are writing for ourselves and for our family is the best that it can be, and one that we are proud of, and one that we can certainly live with the trade-offs and the regrets that will come from the choices that we make. And speaking of choices, that brings me to number 10, which is to put rules in place to bypass my areas of weakness in my personality. So I recently listened to a podcast, and there was a fella on there discussing how if somebody calls him on the phone and is like, hey, you want to get together for coffee or whatever, he has a rule that he never says yes to commitments over the phone. And it's just a flat out rule he has. Because we often end up doing things that we don't want to do because we don't know how to say no, and we overcommit and all of this. So if we put rules in place, it takes the personal feeling out of it. Like, this isn't personal towards that person, and that person doesn't feel like it's personal towards them because it's just my rule. My rule is that I don't say yes to get-togethers, whatever it is, over the phone. I don't say yes to those things without talking to my spouse first. Whatever your rule in place that you need to set, but it's just kind of like this idea of putting rules in place that protect your boundaries, that take the personal element out of it, so that you can deal with people in your life more seamlessly, and you don't feel like you're having to make it like a person-to-person choice, and they don't feel like it's person-to-person choice. So I feel like that's like a little ambiguous, but hopefully it's like a principle that you can think about if there's boundaries in your life that you feel like are being crossed, where you're like, oh, I don't really like doing that, but I don't really know how to say no to that, or I don't really know how to handle that. What kind of rules can you put in place as a, fail-safe that allows you to put this rule up? It's not personal. The other person or whatever just knows that, like, okay, that's just how it goes, right? It's kind of silly, but one of mine and one of my big ones that I've been doing for the last 6 months or so, I do not make any important decisions if I feel like I want to start something or quit something or whatever. I never allow myself to make those decisions if I'm feeling any kind of emotion, super excited or super sad. If I feel like struggling and I don't want to do this thing anymore, I want to quit. Or, oh my gosh, I just had this great idea, I'm going to do this. I do not allow myself to act on either of those impulses. If there's something I want to stop doing or if there's something I want to start doing, whenever that feeling comes, I make myself sit on it for not a certain specific amount of time. The rule is just that I'm not allowed to make that decision then. I typically make myself wait a couple of days. And if I'm being totally honest, which this is not going to resonate unless you are a female, sometimes I make myself wait if it's a really big decision until I go through a full cycle. Okay? If you understood how much, and maybe you do, your cycles affect how you see things, how you feel about things, how you feel about people. Hello, there's points in our cycle which, biologically speaking, make a lot of sense where we can be disgusted, like our husband comes near us, we're like, get away from me. It's because it's a time where we're supposed to be in our cave with our blanket, sleeping and attempting to make this baby stick in our belly, which there's no baby in my belly and there might not be one in yours either, but our biological clocks and inner workings don't know that. They think we're trying to make one stick in there. So we're going to go into the cave, we're going to rest, we're going to sleep, we're going to eat. Stay away from me because you can't impregnate me right now, so go away. I mean, that's really what so much of our inner workings, our brains and our hormones are all driven around. Make a baby, make a baby, make a baby. There's even times of the month where we listen to music more. We change the type of music that we listen to. There's so much that's affected by those cycles. And so sometimes I make myself wait to make really big decisions until I've gone through a full cycle and felt all the emotions about that thing. And the last one, this is one that I have known for years, I've talked about, but you don't realize how sometimes these things slip back in. So for me, it is allowing myself to sort of live fully in the both and. What is this crazy lady talking about? You might be asking yourself, well, I've never really fit in any one place because I have varied interests, and often those interests seem as though they would be almost like diametrically opposed. I have always felt that they do not have to be, but unfortunately, because we live in a world that is now just completely driven by algorithms, it does want things to fit into a box. And so I think it's forcing those black and white narratives about things. What I'm trying to say is, there was somebody on social media that posted something about, I don't know how to put on false eyelashes, but I know how to make homemade bread. I understand completely the heart and the intent by that post. My first reaction was like, well, what if I like to do both? You can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. And I do think that there's always this like us versus them, very like tribal thing. And so when you're kind of like in the homesteading world, but then I'm also somebody who has always enjoyed fashion and makeup and skincare and hair products and curling irons and stuff. But unfortunately, the world of the algorithm wants to kind of just bundle like with like. It wants to say like, here's the homesteading, homemaker people. Here's like the fashion and beauty and skincare people. And because we not only live in a world that really, really, really likes niches, which means that people are incentivized to only share about one facet of their life deeply. So you're only sharing about like this one very specific aspect of your life. And then you have an algorithm that says, aha, yes, very niche. Haha, and we push that up to the top. It means that where there is complexity, where there is paradox, where there is a both and, that doesn't really, like, where does it go? Where does it fit? I don't know. What is she? What is she about? What is she like? And combine that with our like tribalistic mentalities about things and like, these are my people. You're not one of my people. I know this feels like a rant and I don't mean for it to be, but I just am like, I'm not here for it, okay? I would like to rage against the algorithm. It's possible to hold these two things together, to be both and, to enjoy makeup and fashion, but also love your farm and your animals and your chickens, and you can butcher chickens, you can milk goats or cows, you can make homemade bread. You can do all of those things. You can be all of those things. You don't have to be, but you can be. The feeling of not belonging and not fitting in any one sphere of people, when I actually meet people in person in any of these spheres, it's like, oh, this person is far more complex, with far more interests and stuff than you would see online. It just doesn't, it's a breeding ground, right? For that like separation and like cafeteria tables in high school of like these girls sit here and these girls sit here and these girls sit here. And I have always enjoyed floating between the tables. I like to kind of hang out with everybody because I have varied interests. And I do think that a lot of people are like that. I know I'm not special. I'm not the only one. There's lots of people that are like that. A Jill of all trades, a Renaissance mom, if you will. We have a lot of interests, and it's things like that that we used to praise in people. Da Vinci, he was all over the place. He was all over the place in what he was working on, thinking about in any given day. Look at his journals and notebooks. It's wild. The man was all over the place. And we look at that and we're like, oh yes, that's amazing, right? We can see the benefit, but somehow we have a really hard time translating that to ourselves and to those around us. So for me, it's about really truly settling myself into like, I'm okay with living in the paradox. I'm okay with living in the both and if the algorithm hates me for it, so be it. If I get kind of mean, snarky comments when I'm posting about things from like the various tribes of people who are like, hey, not only am I lowering my own expectations of other people, but when I don't meet other people's expectations, that's okay by me too.